conservative, constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
And welcome, everybody, to another amazing week right here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Very exciting show for you coming up here. Also as well, I want to tell you here, our next two episodes after this one, So make sure you're tuning in over the next 2 weeks because we will have on Senate candidates responding to a video form. This is an interesting little project put together. Asked a couple of the campaigns to respond to some questions via video statement, and they did so. So we will be playing those, going through those questions about the national debt, Ukraine, Israel, McConnell, why they're running. All good questions. Actually, the best questions. Wrote by, obviously, the most intelligent person in the world. That was me. Anyways, today's show, however, very good show for you here. We have a Democrat state legislator currently on work release in committee hearings. They're not sending us their best, are they? I guess you do have to be a no-good, dirty drunk to run as a Democrat in Kentucky at this point, which would explain why Beverly Chester-Burton is currently under house arrest for, I believe, her second or third DUI that is allowed out of her house to attend committee hearings. So we'll talk about that. Beshear, a family trip to Europe costed taxpayers at least $45,000. Let's see here. We also have Beshear finds money for seniors meal program. That'll be worth talking about. I'll do something I hate doing, which is digging into a little bit of national politics with the Thomas Massie versus Ed Gallrein, Rand Paul, Trump fiasco. Just give you some feelings on it, really. No matter which side of that conflict you're on, you're probably going to be mad at me. So, but it is what it is. Also, I'll be responding to a few controversies / themes and comments on some recent posts of mine on social media that have gotten some attention, thousands of people viewing them and thousands of people reacting to them and commenting. And some of the comments are people are pretty crazy. And then if we have time, I want to dig into this Lexington art project. Maybe you've heard about it, maybe you've not. They strung up a piece of art that looks like a dedication to Mardi Gras, maybe. It looks like a chain of beads, silver beads that you'd get at Mardi Gras for showing your parts publicly there. That's what it looks like. But there's a little more to it that's worth discussing. So we'll have that all here today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. But first, make sure you've liked, comment, share, subscribe. If you're listening to this on a podcasting platform, make sure you leave a review for us. That helps out as well. I do appreciate it. If you're listening to this on radio or TV, and you want to know, hey, I like this show. I want to hear more about this. I want to hear more about what's going on here in Kentucky. Well, you can head over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com to go ahead and follow along. So Chester-Burton here, Beverly Chester-Burton, is currently on house arrest. She's gotten now her second DUI in 5 years. And she's received her sentence. Apparently, she entered into an Alford plea last week, stemming from the DUI from last year's. The plea means Chester-Burton is not admitting guilt, but acknowledges there's enough evidence to convict her. Interesting. I don't really hear a lot about other people being caught dead to rights with a DUI. I mean, it's not like hard to catch you for a DUI, right? You blow into the thing and you blow too high. They may do a blood test or do a field sobriety test. It's not like you get picked up for a DUI and they didn't collect a bunch of evidence in the process. In this case, though, it gets a little more stronger here because she was arrested in August of 2024 in Shively there. That's a kind of what would you call it? Like a borough, a city within a city there in Louisville. Anyways, police said Chester-Burton was driving in the wrong direction and then swerving back into the correct lanes. While police were talking to her, they said she was slurring her speech and had a strong smell of alcohol coming from her vehicle. She also refused to take a field sobriety test. Chester-Burton pled guilty to a DUI charge in 2020. While she was mayor of Shively, she paid a fine in that case. She represents the 44th House District there in Louisville. I have never gotten a DUI. I know some people have gotten DUIs. Last I checked, you're not generally allowed, especially on your second DUI, to come away with, according to this, it looks like she still gets to keep her license. With this plea agreement, she's getting 10 days of house arrest, but she also gets work release, so she can keep going into the legislature. Now, granted, there is in our Constitution a law stating that you cannot interfere, law enforcement, the executive branch, cannot interfere with legislative proceedings. I am unclear on if they had to give her work release. She's not currently in session, so it's like a weird situation. But it's in our Constitution because what they don't want is, the governor or somebody to attempt to stop you from voting on something, arresting you. And stopping you from going into the legislature. And so maybe that has something to do with it. But 10 days of house arrest, $909 in fines. She must also complete an alcohol and drug education program and will be on probation for 2 years. It does not say she's lost her license. This is an article from WLKY, by the way. It did not say she's lost her license. And like I said, minimal amount of information on DUIs, though I feel like if it's your second DUI in 4 years, generally speaking, people who are found guilty of that do lose their license, have fines more of $909, and get more than 10 days of house arrest. I could be wrong, but I feel like the punishment doesn't fit the crime. I guess rules for thee, but not for me. What do we expect? What do we expect, of course? I bet you if you looked at her voting history on DUIs, it'd be pretty interesting, too, as well. Speaking of Democrats, drunk on power, we have Beshear come back from his family vacation, dropping $45,000 of your tax dollars on a trip to Europe. Now, he says this was an economic development trip. Directly on paper, we see that the taxpayers did pay for the tickets of both Andy Beshear and his wife. However, on social media, Andy Beshear also brazenly posted a photo of his kids joining him on that trip. So it just so happens he goes on an economic development trip where the taxpayer pays for him and his wife. That trip just so happens to fall on his children's fall break, where they're able to join him. Now, obviously, I don't think the taxpayer paid for the kids' tickets, but I'm pretty sure if we checked, the kids probably stayed in the same hotel room with Andy Beshear and his wife. I would imagine so. When I travel with my family, we all generally stay in one hotel room. And even if they didn't, it means at least you saved money on the tickets for yourself and your wife. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to use somebody else's money to take a trip to Europe, plan it when I want to, go to where I want to, spend someone else's money, and all I got to do is hock up, a grand or two for my kids' tickets. It's probably not even a grand or two per ticket. It's probably somewhere around $600, I'd say. I don't know for sure, but around $600. Unless, of course, they're flying, because according to their result here, it doesn't look like they flied coach. The cost per ticket is a lot. It's a lot. A lot of that, out of that $45,000, it looks like 20 grand of it is for 4 plane tickets. That's $5,000 a ticket. That's a little hefty as far as that goes. Definitely something crazy, but of course the Democrats defend it. They say, well, look at Trump. Look at what Trump does. He travels all the time. First off, Trump's cost to the taxpayer when he travels is not because he's actually like Andy Beshear did, filing out forms and pretending to do business. The reason why he has Air Force One and the reason why it costs so much when he travels, when he does his normal life, is because he has to have so much security with him. And so rather than saying, how do you divvy that out? Like you're going to turn to somebody and say, look, you have to pay for your own travel to do your own personal work, but we're going to make you take a giant plane and hundreds of security with you because of your position. I mean, at that point, he would have to be stuck, literally just stuck only inside the White House and Camp David. If he ever did anything other than the White House and Camp David, you would say, well, compared to Andy Beshear, who can literally travel with his family when he wants to and doesn't have to bring security with him. Nobody's worried about Andy Beshear being assassinated if he takes his family to Australia. He doesn't need security there. Nobody knows who he is. But the president, on the other hand, different situation. But of course, Democrats don't see this. Instead, they just want to try to deflect away from the fact that Beshear wasted $45,000. We'll see what happens. Well, coming up after this, we'll talk about Beshear again, finds money for a seniors meals program. It'll just be worth kind of discussing a little bit. And then we'll dig into that Massie, Trump, Ed Gallrein fiasco. We'll have that when we come back. And welcome back to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So there's been a little bit of controversy over the past few months regarding this meals program. This senior meals program had run out of funding, and Governor Beshear was suddenly able to find some money to shore up this funding issue. So let's take a listen. This is a news report from WCHS 8, Fox 11, talking about, this is, I believe, out of Eastern Kentucky, talking about this story. I want you to listen to their story here so we can kind of dig into it.
And Kentucky seniors, they are getting some much-needed relief tonight after the state's meal program nearly ran out of funding.
Now, the program is run through Kentucky's 15 area development districts, and it provides crucial meals to older adults across the state. Governor Beshear has now earmarked more than $9 million to keep the program going.
And Gil McClanahan reports that on how this funding really is going to keep food on the table just for thousands of seniors.
The money will be divided among Kentucky's 15 area development districts and will get these districts to the end of the current fiscal year, which is June 30th, 2026. Governor Andy Beshear says his administration found a pot of money that was earmarked for a Medicaid study.
The original study was not done, and so the dollars are sitting there. From this appropriation, we are moving $9.1 million in funding to senior meals.
What are you going to do after that?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess we're not going to try to expand.
Ratliff says they will evaluate their program from now until the end of the fiscal year.
We're going to try to meet what we've got because next year's budget, we don't know how much we'll have to plan with. So we're kind of hesitant to expand or add any additional people to the program because we're hesitant because next year there may not be as much money.
Because the way next year's budget is shaping up, the budgeted amount will likely be all that's available.
One of the jobs for Kentucky lawmakers in the upcoming session will be to pass a 2-year state budget. Will the General Assembly make sure the program is fully funded when you return to session?
I absolutely think that the General Assembly will assure that the program is fully funded. I think we would have made sure the program was fully funded the last time if we had been given appropriate budgetary numbers.
The next session of the Kentucky General Assembly will begin in January. In the Huntington newsroom, Gil McClanahan, Eyewitness News.
So there you go. A little bit of reporting there, ending there with Senator Philip Wheeler talking about how the legislature will obviously fund this program. It's just a meals program for elderly. Pretty important, I'm sure. Not saying there's any problem with it. What I do want to draw attention to, though, is that Beshear was able to just find $9 million. It was just found. Beshear said his administration found a pot of money earmarked for a Medicaid study, but the study was never done. Can we pause there just for a second and ask what the actual heck is going on with our government? First, you have $9 million being set aside for a Medicaid study, would have been wasted on a Medicaid study. You know why we know it would have been wasted on a Medicaid study? Because it was never done. If it was an important Medicaid study, if it was a good use of your tax dollars, it wouldn't have just fallen through the cracks that it was never completed. Also, can we reflect on the fact that apparently our state government has apparently tens of millions, I would guess, because he just found 9 million, tens of millions apparently sitting in, oh no, God knows where, that was earmarked for something we never did, that's just existing out there that nobody's aware of, apparently. How can you make a budget as a legislator? Just mentioned they're coming up on their long session. It's their time to make a budget. How can you make a budget if you don't even know how much money you have, how much money you need? Do you have extra money sitting somewhere? Do you have millions squirreled away that everybody's unaware of? And importantly, if people are unaware this money exists, doesn't that offer opportunities for misuse and abuse of funds? Everybody's here celebrating the senior meals program getting this funding relief, and I'm glad. If it was really that big of a deal, Andy Beshear could have called a special session if he really didn't have the money. But just reflecting on that, he found $9 million set aside for a Medicaid study that was never done. What is going on? And anybody who looks at that story and doesn't immediately see that is a quote-unquote fiscal conservative, you're not a fiscal conservative. If you're like, oh, he found money, that's great. They just found money. And you know what? This happens at the federal level too. I know we've seen Trump many times. We're like, oh, we found this money that we can do this. Oh, we found this money. We're seeing that with the shutdown. Oh, we found money here. We found money there. Maybe we should just stop and make the government find money. Maybe we should just cut off funding and say, look, you're not going to get any funding. We should do this every 5-6 years. Say this is the 3-month, your only funding comes from the couch cushions months, where you go through your accounts and you find all the millions, the 9 million here, the 10 million there, the 12 million there, that was never spent. And that's the money you operate on for those months. It seems like, apparently, much the same as if you need to, get a drink or something and you check your cup holders in your car. The state has just millions in its car's cup holders. I don't know. I'm pretty outraged about it. Clearly pretty outraged by it. So digging into, let's talk about this Lexington art project. We'll talk about the Massie Trump Ed Gallrein thing on the next segment, because I think I need more than the 5 or so minutes I have left. So Lexington put up this art structure. A lot of people upset about celebrating 250 years of Lexington. Here you go. Here's a picture. For those of you who can't see it, it's like a string of metal beads that's just wrapped around itself on so you got 2 posts, and it's in a figure 8 between the posts, and it's these metal beads. They look like Mardi Gras beads, that you get if you're a woman and you show your chest in New Orleans and you throw the little plastic beads, but it's metal. So it would make, I guess it makes some, I don't know what this has to do with 250 years of Lexington. Nothing to do with horses, the state. It's literally just, I think it's 250 spherical balls attached together in a figure 8-ish. Great, swell. I mean, this would make more sense as a celebration of Mardi Gras than it would Lexington. But and many people have seen this and they've looked at this eye-popping amount. I believe they spent $900,000 on this string of beads, $900,000, and it's not that great, to say the least. And there's something else though, right? Also, too, the artist Benjamin Ball, he's from California. He said this here. He said the work is deeper meaning. That's right. He said it has deeper meaning. He says, a common thread represents significant commitment to public art here in Kentucky. Benjamin Ball, the artist from California who tapped to build this sculpture, said the work has a deeper meaning. The work is a loom for shared identity, a place where past and future are held together by a common thread. It literally, it looks like garbage. It does. It's stupid. So putting that to the side, here's the other thing. This is what nobody's talking about. Several cities, too, in Kentucky have this. This is bonkers. So they have a law in Lexington that every time the city takes out a loan, 2% of the funds they pulled out goes into a fund just for arts. So not only did we spend $900,000 on this piece of crud, but also, by law, the city of Lexington went into debt, definitionally, went into $900,000 of debt to build it. Why would you pass a law that makes the city go into debt for art pieces? I like art when it's good, not this trash, but when it's good, I like art. You probably like art too. You probably have some paintings and stuff hung around. You got some things put up. You know, I like a good painting as much as the next guy. A nice photograph, nice print. I'm with you. But what I don't do is say, you know what? This wall's missing something. Honey, let's go a couple of grand into debt and go buy a painting for this wall. Who does that? Well, apparently, if you run your household like the city of Lexington runs its city, you would do that. You would make yourself go into debt for art. And now we've mentioned this on the show before when they put up the girders and it looked like just a scrapyard, really. They put up some girders and some barbed wire and a flame at the entrance of the prison. Spent hundreds of thousands on that. Another piece of trash, modern art. You'd think that, like, after the response to that was also like, this looks stupid, they would stop doing this, but of course they don't. I don't think so. So it's nice that the city of Lexington's largest ever public art piece looks like trash. So there you go. Bunch of trash on the street there, but you spent $900,000 for it. Coming up after this, okay, we'll dig into that Thomas Massie, Ed Gallrein, Trump, Rand Paul, whatever fiasco. I'll voice that. And we'll also be talking about some posts on social media, some people's reactions to them. Give you a hint, they're all stupid. Everybody disagrees with me, stupid. They're a bunch of dumbos. Well, when we come back, we'll have that. See you back here in a few short minutes. And welcome, everybody, to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. This next segment here, I'll be talking about the Thomas Massie race. All of you will be upset at me, and I hope all of you continue to listen to the show. And I know I don't really like to talk about national politics a whole lot, but this obviously deals with Kentucky. And it upsets me from a particular standpoint that I do know who Ed Gallrein is. And literally all of you who say, hey, look, we're America first. We're MAGA. We're tired of foreign wars. We want to keep our money at home. We're tired of the establishment. We're tired of the deep state. Ed Gallrein's the exact opposite of that. How do I know this? He literally, and that's that Trump endorsed candidate against Massie, he ran for the state Senate last year, 22. And so he ran in 2022, 24, sorry. He ran in 2024 against Aaron Reed and Adrian Southworth. Aaron Reed won, of course. The Senate Republican Caucus Campaign Committee. Now, this is a committee that all the big donors put money into, that everybody who seeks to control what our state legislature does, controlling its PACs, the big pharma. You know, I mean, look, Pfizer gave $1 million to the building fund for the Republican Party of Kentucky again. You know, all that money in those funds, they flow into this PAC called the Caucus Campaign Committee PACs. And Democrats and Republicans both have one in both the Senate and the House. And these are PACs that are controlled by leadership in the Senate. And so if you look at what Kentucky has done over the last 20, 30 years, and you say we're in a better spot, we're in a great place, I love where we're at as a state. I agree with how much we're spending, which is more than we were 20 years ago, adjusted for inflation. I agree with how much we're paying in taxes, which is more than we were paying 20 years ago, adjusted for inflation. If you say I agree with all those things, then you would agree that with the Senate Republican Caucus Campaign Committee does. If you don't agree with those things, and you are against the establishment, and you're against these political powers that only serve themselves, you're against the idea of giant corporations and lobbyists controlling our government while you, the voter, takes a back seat. If you're against those things, then you would be against whoever the Senate Republican Caucus Campaign Committee is supporting. Now, it used to be a rule that they would only support incumbents, and they would claim, like, look, we're just supporting incumbents. We don't take sides in primaries. Well, in that primary, they did take a side, and they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for Ed Gallrein. Now, he lost by a handful of votes to Aaron Reed, but that's who backed him. All the establishment hacks you hate, all the people who actually hate Trump, they hate him. If you think they don't, you need to wake up. They dislike him heavily. They always have. They'll pretend they like him because he polls well to you, but they do not like him. That's who supported Ed Gallrein. So we know he's a globalist. We know he's an establishment hack. If you like the way, for an example, somebody like, I don't know, Brett Guthrie or Hal Rogers votes, if you like the way somebody like Lindsey Graham votes, because after all, Ed Gallrein donates money to Lindsey Graham. If you like the way he votes, then you will vote for Ed Gallrein. If, however, you take issue with that, you'll vote for Thomas Massie. That's why I feel strongly about this race. It's not as much about national politics as it is that I know who supported that guy. And I know what that means. And I don't like seeing people fall for it. I don't like seeing people fall to vote for this. Now, some people I see online are writing things like, well, you know, Trump, he gets a lot more information than we do. He must know something we don't. I trust Trump. I trust Trump's judgment on this, and so on and so forth. Guys, Trump knows less than you do about who these people are. He relies on advisors to tell him. Trump is the head, and he's a good head. But the neck controls where the head looks. And the people who have control of the neck a lot of times are not good people. And they control the information that Trump is getting. Period. He has no idea who Ed Gallrein is. He might have met with him one time. They were searching fervently for an opponent against Massie. They were talking to everyone. It wasn't like this is a huge, big plan set aside. It's just not. And for those of you that say, well, you know, I normally like Massie, but Trump must know something we don't. It's not that big of a secret. Massie voted against the One Big Beautiful Bill, which, let's be honest, not that great of a piece of legislation. Just my opinion. You may like it. I don't. We can disagree about it. Okay. That's fine. You listen to me for my state politics, not my national politics. But he voted against it. And you know what? There's a reasonable side of things that you can vote against those kinds of things. And that was Trump's big, beautiful bill. So naturally, he's upset about it. Also, he's upset about the Epstein thing. And now I don't think Trump is in the files per se and slept with underage kids and all these other garbage. If you really believe that, you're kind of messed up. Trump didn't do that. But clearly, there's something Trump doesn't want out there. He calls it a hoax. I think what he's alluding to is that Democrats have littered his name into the file to prevent him from releasing it without redacting it in order to save their own butts, in order to stop Trump from releasing the Epstein files when he got into office. And Massie wants those released. And he's like, oh, that's not what I want because it might be embarrassing for me. I don't want it. Massie does. He's mad about it. That's it. He was mad at Massie too. He called up Massie mad at him in his first term when during COVID lockdowns, they voted to give trillions of dollars in bailout money. Maybe you remember this, the first tranche. They wanted to vote on that without actually voting on it. And Massie went up there and said, look, we need to all come back into session and have a roll call vote. Trump called Massie mad at him for demanding a roll call vote on handing out like $4 trillion. He's mad about it. And they can both be right from their points of view. That's why when I look at people, people ask me like, who do you agree with? Who do you disagree with? Everything else. I'm not going to agree with people's individual viewpoints or individual decisions necessarily. I care more about what's your philosophy. Now, many establishment politicians have no political philosophy. It's whatever works for them, which is why they'll say things that make no sense. They'll have missteps. They'll be pretending to be one thing and they'll slip up and say something that has egg on their face because they don't actually talk the lingo. They don't actually know what they're talking about. They don't actually feel this. They're just whatever they need to be in that moment. A lot of politicians are this way. The politicians I respect are those that have a philosophy, specifically a philosophy of liberty, a philosophy of respecting our Constitution, a philosophy of protecting the rights of individuals. And when we sit down and have a disagreement on something, as I'm sure you may disagree with me on many things, when we have a disagreement, as long as you can argue your viewpoint using those principles, I can disagree with you but still respect you. If you're going to ask me to defend every single one of Massie's decisions or every single one of Rand Paul's decisions or every one of Trump's decisions, I can't do it. Because it's maybe not the decision I would have made. However, what I do trust with all three of them is they do have some overriding philosophy of some sort that I think for all three of them is generally good. And as long as they can conceptualize why they did what they did within those viewpoints, I can respect and agree to disagree on certain things and still support them. But when they make a decision and you ask, why'd you do that? And they struggle to come up with a reason why that makes any kind of philosophical sense. Some are deeper, some aren't. If they can't come up with it, that's when you don't respect them. That's when you don't trust them. They have nothing that they're relying on other than themselves. They have no philosophy, no greater beliefs, no God that they're putting trust in. That's just my feelings on it. I could go on, and I might hear when we come back. Also, we'll be talking a little bit social media posts. We'll have that when we come back here in a few short minutes. And you're back here on this final segment of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. I started to talk about the Massie, Trump, Ed Gallrein, Rand Paul kind of thing. Just kind of talking about that race, a little bit of my thoughts, just something I felt like I had to get out. And the other thing that's driving me crazy, too, if I just have to complain for a second here, is, I see things where there's there's definitely a double standard. There's no self-awareness. For an example, I've seen a lot of people talking about, well, Jack Dorsey endorsed Massie or some, I guess, social Democrats of America or something, some organizer that donated $500 to Massie. And they're like, oh, he's supported by these people. And while I can look at a list of many donors and say, oh, geez, I don't like that person. One-off donations like that, you don't want to get into this game. You don't, because we can play this game. Okay, for an example, we know AIPAC has spent millions of dollars against Massie already, and most likely, we know, will spend millions of dollars supporting Ed Gallrein to win office. Do you know who one of AIPAC's largest donors is? It's the owners of OnlyFans. The owner of OnlyFans donated $11 million to AIPAC last year. OnlyFans. So if you want to play like, oh, he took money from Jack Dorsey or he took money from this Democrat socialist that he probably didn't even know who that Democrat socialist was. Or if you want to say, well, he didn't take money from Jack Dorsey. Well, Jack Dorsey supports him, so I hate him. Well, the creator of OnlyFans is supporting Ed Gallrein. I mean, we can look at a donors list of all these people and say, well, do you really want a guy who's supported by that person or by that person? Do you want the guy that Raytheon is putting money into, Lockheed, the defense contractors that they're putting money into? I don't know. I just think it's kind of that's just a dumb line of talking, I think. And it frustrates me when I see it because, like I said, you can play this game all day. Now, a cacophony of donors. If I'm seeing 50, 60 donors that also have something else in common. For an example, on this show, I talked about when the Senate candidates had 50, 60 donors from McConnell donating to them. Say, hey, it looks like the guy McConnell's group is backing. But, Anyways, recently on social media, I had a few posts that some people have gotten up in arms about, mad at me over. One was, of course, the European vacation. I talked about that. People trying to defend that, pointing to Trump, of course. It's a stupid thing to argue about. Here's another one. This one got some comments, 801 comments on this. So I shared about $1.7 million to educational institutions for migrant education. And, of course, many good-hearted conservatives on there upset about it because I talked about the fact that, we're raising taxes. There's like 5 tax fights I'm involved in where petitions are being run to recall taxes. I'm going to be like the number one hated person by all these schools. Anyways, I'm involved with these tax fights. Meanwhile, we're spending, $1.7 million on migrant education. And a lot of people commented on the left saying, you guys are stupid. You don't know about the migrant education program. That isn't illegal immigrants. And they're right, not necessarily. Can be, but not necessarily. What is that migrant program? Well, the migrant program is for people who follow, it's supposed to be migrant farmers, people who follow growing seasons and are seasonal workers in an area, let's say. And the idea here is that their children need special educational help due to the fact they move around so much. That's what the people who defend this will claim. This doesn't have anything to do with illegal immigration. Here's why they're being dishonest. First, these people, by large part, are not citizens of the U.S. Now, it's hard to find data on this exactly, but who falls into the migrant program, okay? Obviously, illegal immigrants, not a part of it. Also, there's legal immigration visa holders, legal visa holders that get brought in on a seasonal basis to work agricultural jobs here in Kentucky. So companies, farmers, landscapers, agriculture groups, they'll file for these visas, get them. They'll go down into, most of the time, Mexico, pick up workers, bring them back for like 10 months. When the season's over, they then take them back to Mexico and drop them back off, or they're supposed to go back to Mexico or any other country they're coming from. Just most of the time it happens to be Mexico. Definitionally then, those people are not U.S. citizens. So you have illegal immigrants, you have people who are not U.S. citizens. You also have individuals that are moving around a whole lot that may be U.S. citizens, but it's a very, very small percentage. It's a very small percentage. And so the point about these programs, and Trump has cut these programs moving forward, but we're still handing out money for them for some reason. The thing about these programs is that we're over here funding non-U.S. citizens' education while we have to raise the taxes on U.S. citizens to pay for their children's educations. It's not right. We can't educate the world. Now, of course, the Democrats responded to this. Obviously, went to the old thing, calling me racist, of course. Oh, well, you just hate anybody who's not white. That's not true. I don't want to pay for the education of any foreigners. I'll give you an example. This was 2-3 years ago. In the state Senate here in Kentucky, there was a committee that passed a bill out of their committee to set aside $50 million to give free college to Ukrainian refugees. This is when the Ukrainian war is just kind of firing up, people getting out, Ukrainian refugees. They want to give $50 million for them to get free college, while American citizens, whose money it is, have to pay for their own college educations. That's not right. I fought against that. This may shock some people on the left, but Ukrainians are white. It has nothing to do with a person's skin color and everything to do with the fact, have you been here? Has your family been here? Have you been paying into the system before you come in here and start using up millions upon tens of millions of dollars, causing the rest of our taxes to go up because we can't educate the world? It's a simple math problem. You can call me mean and angry and everything else, but what I think is mean and angry is going to a bunch of American citizen families who are struggling to survive and say, you need to dig into your pocket and pay for this guy that just showed up's kids to get their education because it's the quote-unquote right thing to do. If you as an individual have the extra and you want to help out kids of the world get education, there's plenty of nonprofits for you to donate to do that. It is wrong of you to use the force of government to steal money out of other people's pockets, though, to fund things they literally can't afford while they're struggling to survive. But of course, you say those things, you're leftist, you're a hatist, you're an awful, horrible, terrible, no good person. Also, speaking of the school taxes, I've had a few episodes where I've had some people on to talk about school taxes, and the amount of people that are just like, oh, let's get paid more in taxes is crazy. Also, the schools, it's a little insane. So they'll sit there and say, this isn't a tax increase, you're being disingenuous. The rate stayed the same. It's not our fault the PVA is going up. By law, you cannot referendum a school tax unless it's a higher than 4% tax increase. If your vote on setting the rate of which you tax property at is eligible to be recalled on a referendum vote, you have definitionally raised taxes more than 4%, full stop, that's it. All these people trying to argue differently are being completely disingenuous at best, lying at worst. And they'll sit there and say, you're not sharing the full information. You're dumb. You're stupid. You're not, oh man, this is a misleading post. It's not misleading. You're raising taxes more than 4%. That's why we can referendum it. Sure, the rate stayed the same, but property values went up so far to the point that the compensating rate, the rate at which you would tax property at to keep your revenues the same, which would mean people aren't writing bigger checks to you, dropped. You have raised taxes. By voting to keep the rate the same while property values went up, you raised taxes. That's why it can be referendum. Stop lying about it. And then you see them deflect to who's funding this? Who's the people behind this? It's citizens in your community. They have to be. I can't. I've never thought I would live to see this wild, wild world where people will literally defend being taxed. It's like they're into it or something. They're like, tax me harder. Tax me harder. So weird. Well, next week, exciting episodes here. We'll have on those Senate candidates answering that forum. I know you're very excited for it. I certainly am. We'll see you back here next week. You guys have a great rest of your day. Hey, maybe you're upset at me at what I said, Massie, Trump, Med, Gallrein, whatever. I don't care, but just, hey, keep listening. I don't talk about those things all the time, and I do have other interesting things to say. We'll see you all here next week.